Hey, new message from Max. New wireframe, small fry. You've been keeping up so far, but this one looks pretty complicated. Hope you've got your chai tea or whatever it is in that mug of yours ready. Take a look at 19 tour calendar wireframe ping for the main image and 21 tour calendar block wireframe ping for the block. The data is in 20 tour data CSV. It's getting pretty late over here, but if these guys have anything, it's stamina. Hope we can wrap this up before the game. Oh, and good news, Sandra found her puppy. It hitched a lift on a delivery truck for one of their desert spin tours. I don't know why he did it. His legs are clearly too short for those bikes. Okay, let's take a look at the calendar wireframe. So it's step 19 here. Okay, so it looks like we have a table, which is something we haven't done yet in Views, but which is possible. We have columns for the date, tour type, days, guide, and ID. It looks like some of these columns are sortable. We can filter the tours by tour type here. It looks like we have a drop-down menu, and we have some content between the title and the view itself. By default, it looks like the tours are sorted by date, and I would make the assumption that any tours that have been completed will no longer show on here. Let's take a look at the data. So we have a CSV file, and I'm going to import it into Google Sheets. You can open this up in Excel or any other spreadsheet program too. So we have a unique ID, the date the tour is on, how many days the tour lasts for, the tour type, and the guide running the tour. Alright, to get all this content into Views, we need a content type, so let's start there. I'm going to go back to our site, and I'll go to Structure, Content Types, Add Content Type. We'll call this Tour. For the title, it looks like we actually have a unique ID, so let's set this to Internal ID. For Published options, let's uncheck Promoted to Front Page. For display options, we'll uncheck the display author and date information, though at this point, we don't have any indicators that individual tours will have their own pages. And for menu settings, let's uncheck main navigation and let's click Save and Manage Fields. For this content type, we're not going to need a body, so let's delete this field. And let's go through the columns in our spreadsheet and add these in. The first one is date. So let's add a field, and let's select the date field. We haven't done this before. Let's click Save and Continue. For the date type, we don't need the time, so let's set the date only. And we only want one value. Let's click Save Field Settings. For the help text, we'll put the date the tour begins, and we'll leave everything at the defaults. For certain pieces of content, you might want to set the default date to the current date. It's nice to know that's an option. But for this, we want to leave it empty. We'll click Save Settings. Now in the future, the date field might also include an ending date, so a start date and an ending date. And if we had that feature, we would be able to derive the number of days from that value instead of adding a separate field for it. But right now, we're going to need to add another field for the number of days. Let's do that. This time, we're going to use a number. The number of days will always be an integer, so let's select number integer, and we'll call this days. We'll click Save and Continue. We'll leave the limit to 1. And we can set the minimum value here to 1 because we're always going to have a positive value. Let's click Save Settings. So we have the date, the days, the ID. Now we need the tour type. To do this, we'll use a reference field. We'll reference content. We'll call this tour type. We'll leave these at the default. At the bottom, we'll select tour type as the type that we want to reference. Click Save Settings. And then the final column is guide. For this one, we'll use a reference field to the staff content type. I'll click Add Field, and we'll select a reference to content. We'll call this Guide. We'll click Save and Continue. We'll leave these settings at the default. We'll scroll down and select Staff here, and Save Settings.